Alright, the purpose of this video is to show you how to create lines and label those lines with a bearing and a distance. So creating lines is pretty simple. Type L for line, and then we, in this particular case, I'm going to turn my O-snaps on by hitting F3 and select node. And then I'm going to start at this node and just work my way around. I know these are my control points, and I want to label those lines with the bearing and distance. Alright, so in order to label these with a bearing and distance, I'm just going to go to the annotate, and I'm going to say add labels. And instead of feature note, I'm going to add line and curve. And line type single segment's fine. Instead of a slope, I'm going to use the bearing and distance option. I'm going to hit add. And then I'm going to click on these individual lines. Wherever I click is where it's going to insert. Wherever I click on that line is where it's going to insert the bearing and distance. Okay, now what I need to do is I need to edit this some of these line labels. The first thing I need to do is this one right here is on the surface side and it's covering part of the surface. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say flip label, and it's going to flip it to the other side of the line. There's another one over here I'm going to do the same for. And the other ones are probably fine. Maybe I'll do it for this one here since it's close to the line. The last thing I'm going to do is you can see that these line labels have a direction arrow. I don't like the direction arrow, so I'm going to remove it. So I'm going to click on this label. Just use this one as an example. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say edit label style. And it's going to bring up the bearing and distance label style, and I'm going to click right here on this button next to it, and I'm going to edit it. So I'm on the, normally the information tab comes up first, but I'm going to go to the layout tab, and you can see direction arrow is one of the options I have here in the drop down menu. I'm going to delete it, so there's no longer any direction arrow. The other thing I'm going to do while I'm here is I'm going to change some of the I'm going to change the bearing so that it's to the nearest second instead of the nearest hundredth of a second, and I'm going to change the distance so it only goes to the hundredth of a foot instead of the thousandth. So I'm going to start by going to the bearing, and I'm going to click here, and this is actually the bearing and distance check, or the bearing and length. So I'm going to start with the bearing, and I'm just going to highlight this upper portion, and right now it shows me that it's single spaced and it's got to the nearest tenth of a second. I'm going to change this precision to a hundredth of a second to a near 1 second. And I'm going to, once I'm done making those changes, I'm going to click this button here and it's going to reinsert it to the right. Then I'm going to select the next one, which is general segment length. And when I select the general segment length, I'm going to change the precision here to the nearest hundredth of a foot, and then I'm also going to insert that one. And I'm going to hit OK. Okay. So I'm going to hit apply and OK. And OK, and then it edits, so I have the bearing to the nearest second and the distance to the nearest hundredth of a foot. That's, typically speaking, that's a traditional way that engineers and surveyors represent bearings and distances. So that's pretty simple. That's all there is to it. Once the lines are labeled, then you're set to go. If you ever need to move the label somewhere along the line, you can just use the diamond tool here, the grip, and like I can type in mid and move it to the midpoint, so it's centered on the midpoint there. You can move them around if you need to, and you can also flip them. I showed you how to flip them. So that concludes this video on how to create lines and label those lines with the bearing and distance.